I would say number one is to be your authentic self. People will appreciate you for who you are, and they will know if you're being genuine. If you're trying to be someone you're not, and you're trying to fit into some mold, that this is how you're supposed to be in this job, your sailors will see right through that. They appreciate a genuine leader. They appreciate someone who knows and is willing to admit what they know and what they don't know and ask questions. And so again, being your authentic self is really important, even as you just start out right now as a ROTC and then moving on into your units. The second one is to build a good team. We don't do anything in the Navy. I think actually you don't get anything done in the world without being part of a team. A team is definitely greater than the sum of its parts. I was a rower. I was a coxswain actually in college. You can't see how short I am. I look as tall as my colleague here, but I'm pretty short. The rowing is like the ultimate team, right? You have the 8 people in the boat. They're all going in unison. The cox is driving them and steering them and motivating them and keeping them in time. I look at the Navy as just a bunch of rowing boats. And as long as we're all rowing together, we are getting after the mission. And so being a leader means that you have to be a good team builder and you have to be a good teammate. I think the third thing I would say is that you need to help people set priorities. You know, one thing that you'll have an advantage of having, gone to college and learned how to prioritize things is that a lot of our sailors didn't necessarily get those skills when they were growing up. Probably some of them never used a planner. They don't really think ahead. And so as a leader working with your chief petty officers, you will set the path for your people and for your division. So if you help them kind of figure out this is what we need to do and give them the path to get there, you will be leaps and bounds ahead of the other people that don't really embrace that team and then don't help the people that work for them connect their dot to the mission. So really the people are our biggest strength in the Navy. As Admiral Joyner mentioned, it's a diverse team. It's a rich fabric of our nation. And you've got to help them connect their dot to the mission because they can't always see it.
It's okay to fail. And I would tell you that you need to push yourself up front to do the hardest things you can, because failing when you're younger is a lot better than failing when you're older. But if you're not willing to fail, first of all, you won't learn. And then how are you going to develop the things that you can teach others so that they can learn through what you've learned? So I want to fail small early rather than fail big later because I wasn't willing to throw myself out there and do things. And then I always tell people, take the hard job. So you show up on a squadron, you show up on a ship, and it's that Christmas watch, or it's something really difficult on the ship. Take that hard job and do it early on, and then later on when you want to go somewhere for Christmas, you've already paid and everybody really appreciates it and they know that your willingness is sky high. So just realize, take that hard job early, and then if you need help with that hard job, ask for help, and you'll find that most of us, people will swarm the problem and help you if you need help along the way. And then, you need to share your success and your failures, and then you need to help others learn.
So everyone in their career has people that have affected them. And I know for me, I've had my very first ship, USS Fife. We had a female navigator, Lieutenant Julie Lampa. She taught me about being not just an intelligent and strong leader. She also taught me to be myself and to maintain that feminism that as a female leader is so very important. I reached out recently to one of the female officers that affected me the most as a junior sailor, as a first class petty officer. She was also an aviator, Lieutenant Commander Josette Curtis. She's amazing. We've kept in touch over the last 15 years. That's how much she has impacted me. I've reached out to her a lot. So thank you, Facebook. I asked her for some key points and advice for this event. This is my first event like this. So I apologize for being nervous. But as usual, she was brilliant. Her advice was don't try to lead by pretending to be someone else. And that is amazing. It took me several years to figure out who I really was as a leader. And, my relationship with her and seeing how she interacted with other members, not just in the wardroom, but other members of our command at the time, taught me that it's okay to be who I am as a leader. I don't have to be the hard A. I don't have to take a hard tact with anyone. I can be that genuine leader that really cares, hugger, if you will. And I think that's opened a lot of doors for me with regard to those relationships, for the officer and enlisted relationships. And even now as a chief, I get to hug more people. It's one of the best things about being a chief. So I lead with my heart. And I learned that people responded to me much more favorably when I was doing that. The second piece that Lieutenant Commander Curtis gave me was, don't ever let promotion be your number one focus. And I have to say that I definitely did not let promotion be my number one focus. She taught me that, being not just being genuine, but, taking care of yourself and taking care of your people is definitely the way to go. It did take me 17 years to make chief, but I think in the long run, that maturity and leading up to that it's probably about the right time for me. She also gave me the advice, be the leader you needed as a junior sailor and officer. And I think she is 100% correct. As a junior sailor, we all, or junior officer, we have those people that we look to. And then we have those people, we have instances where we need a certain type of leader or mentor. So be that person.
So I mentioned that there are credence to irrelevant factors, sometimes things that are affecting our judgment that aren't good, that we're not aware of. And that is exactly what happened in the military for about 100 years. So the Marine Corps, for example, opened up to women in 1918. 100 years later, finally, all specialties, all units are open to qualified women. So for 100 years, policy in the Marine Corps was affected by assumptions, faulty assumptions that were made. Assumptions about what women should do, what women could do, what we were capable of. So those faulty assumptions drove policy for 100 years, okay? And that's an example when bias has gone bad. Now, the good news here is that someone, somewhere at the time, in this case, it was the Secretary of Defense, was convinced that the policy was based on faulty assumptions. He was aware of the bias that led to discrimination, the faulty assumption that all men were capable of doing any job, and that all women were incapable of doing certain jobs. Those are bad assumptions. So we changed them. And thankfully now our policy is that all service members will be judged by what they can do, not what we think they can do. And because we address those faulty assumptions, those bad biases, I think we have strengthened our meritocracy in the military.
So I'm going to attempt to discuss how the Marine Corps preserves the standard of preparedness and military vigor the Marines have held since 1775 while recruiting a force that reflects the face of our society. And I can first off tell you the Marine Corps does not reflect the face of our society. If I Google tells me that 50.8% of Americans are women. Reflect the face of the nation, the Marine Corps would be 50% women. And that would seem odd, right? Especially since most of the time in my career, every time I go into a room, I'm the only female that's in that room. When I joined the Marine Corps was 4% female, 4%. So as of September of 2020, actually the active component of the Marine Corps is actually 8.9%. So really in my 23 years, it's doubled. So maybe there's 2 of us in the room now. The admirals touched about it as well, is that it would look really odd to have 50% female. So that's most likely not a reality of what our military will look like. But I think that 9% probably is not a great reflection of our society. For almost 2 decades, basically our end strength was pretty much the same, and the 4%. And that was based on 2 assumptions, which I would argue that maybe one of them was at least faulty. So the first one is that the propensity of women to join the Marines was only 4%. So only 4% of our society even had the propensity within women to join the Marine Corps. And then the second one is from a policy perspective, the Marine Corps, the statement is that we were a combat arms force. Women can serve in combat arms, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to recruit a lot of women to put in the Marine Corps because we are so combat arms centric. So those two driving factors really drove the end strength of the Marine Corps for women for many, many years. Additionally, all enlisted Marines were trained at 4th Battalion down at Parris Island. 1 battalion, and their throughput and their ability to put women into recruit training and make female Marines was restricted because there was only 1 battalion there that could do that. And actually now I think it's by 2024, Parris Island was going to be fully integrated. And last month, Marine Corps Recruit Depot San Diego actually started training with women and integrating them down there as a pilot program. And eventually, I think it's maybe by 2026, they will be integrated as well. So that was another self-imposed policy, which basically restricted the flow of Marines that we could actually create. So Commandant of the Marine Corps in 2016 basically told the Senate Arms Service Committee that it's really the goal, and it's a realistic goal for the Marine Corps to be at 10% female, both that's combination of officer enlisted within our active duty force. There's been a few studies, and I talked about propensity, but the Naval Postgraduate School published some research that say basically the natural fit for women would be 8.82% in the Marine Corps. And that would be the natural flow of women just joining the Marine Corps. One of the other restrictions, I said there was mostly combat arms. Now that's opened up. One of the other second most popular MOS for females to join the military is the medical field. And the Marine Corps doesn't have a medical field. So when we talk about propensity and talking about women want to join, for a large number of women want to go into the medical field, the Marine Corps doesn't have that option. So therefore, that's another restriction in which the Naval Postgraduate School said limit the number of female that want to join the Marine Corps. So the 4% propensity. Well, they're still using that number from 2016 to 21 is that 4%. There really is the natural within our tendency to join the Marine Corps. And so when I was on recruiting, we had to do better than the 4% for sure. And we did. In fact, this past year, we put in over 13% female officers in the Marine Corps. So if the propensity is 4%, but yet we're still able to achieve 13, I had some really good recruiters, but there's probably some bias associated with that number that's coming from 4%. So go back to when I asked you to think about what you told your family when you wanted to be ROTC, when you wanted to be a Marine, when you wanted to be in the Navy. And let me tell you a little bit about my experience. I remember telling my father, I talked to the Marine recruiter, I'm going to be a Marine. And it was almost like a look of disappointment from my father looked at me and said, why would you want to join the Marine Corps? You should join the Air Force. It's easier. And, that's probably just a father, but it's also maybe a little reflection of our society and some of the biases they have, assuming as a woman that I would want something easier and not something maybe that was more challenging or what the Marine Corps had to offer me. And so as we move forward and society is changing right now and people's biases are shifting, I would say that probably some of you had some of that same experience still to this day is why the Navy, why the Marine Corps. You can get scholarships other ways, why enter ROTC. And that's the thing, in my opinion, we really have to get after to really achieve a recruiting force or to recruit women that are actually that we need here in the Marine Corps, that we need in the Navy, is that get over that propensity to say that the Marine Corps is just a male organization.
Particularly women were, quote, excluded from assignment to units below the brigade level whose primary mission is to engage in direct combat on the ground, end quote. So a battalion is below the brigade level, and the nature of combat engineers in a Marine division meant that they would engage in direct ground combat. So Combat Engineer Battalion was close to women. Fine. We still had a badass MOS. There were still plenty of options for female combat engineers, and we could serve in an engineer support battalion and Marine Wing Support Squadron. Over the course of the next few decades, though, as OAF and OEF happened, we all saw firsthand that this was a distinction in name only, as combat engineers from non-division units were doing the same missions as their brother engineers in the Combat Engineer Battalion. When there was an important and potentially dangerous mission that required engineers, no one was going to stop and check to see if allowing a female combat engineer was allowed per the law. They were going to send to that unit and that Marine that was available. I've deployed twice to Iraq and twice to Afghanistan, and this rule never made sense to me, as all engineers are trained the same way at the same school, and we are intentionally designed to be interchangeable. But those are the rules. So for the bulk of our careers, we went back and forth between engineer units that we were authorized to serve in. That all changed in 2013, when then Secretary of Defense, Panetta, removed the exclusion. But he gave each service time to request exemptions. Disappointingly, the Marine Corps did just that. They requested exemptions, and Lieutenant Colonel Posey had a front row view of that debate if you have any questions on it. Just throw you under the bus. Despite the Corps' objection, though, all restrictions were removed in 2016. So in the summer of that year, 2016, when females were finally eligible to be assigned to CEBs, Lieutenant Colonel Nash had just assumed command of 7th Engineer Support Battalion, and Lieutenant Colonel Posey had just been selected to command 4th Recruit Training Battalion. She likely would have been the first female to command a CEB if one had been available. But that wasn't the case, since both active duty CEBs in the Marine Corps were open the next year, the first year I would be eligible. So in the summer of 2017, I competed for command, and both active duty CEBs were options, as well as several other engineer units. The way it works for command is you're given a list of all available commands, and then you rack and stack them, submit them, and then a panel of colonels and generals decide who is going to command and then who's going to command what unit. I remember filling out the questionnaire and considering whether to put 7th ESB on there, where I would replace Lieutenant Colonel Nash, or 1st CEB, where I would be the first woman to command since its inception in 1941. It was not an easy decision. I had served in 2 other ESBs, and that would have been in many ways the more comfortable choice for me. And I knew there'd be a lot of pressure and a lot of eyeballs on me. Vice Admiral Franchetti talked about it's always easier to be second, and I'm sure that that's true. But I was making a decision whether or not I wanted to be first. One of the things that actually helped was Lieutenant Colonel Nash, who 2 years prior had filled out her questionnaire. And since the restriction hadn't been lifted, she didn't have the option to command a CEB, but she still put it as her #1 choice, because why not? And how bold is that? What a great statement how stupid the rules were. And so that helped me make that decision. So I talked it over with my wife. And then I remember distinctly sitting in front of my computer, taking a deep breath, thinking, let's do this. And I hit submit with 1st Combat Engineer Battalion as my top choice. And thankfully, I was selected for that and assumed command of 1st CEB that's the summer of 2018. So since Lieutenant Colonel Nash and Posey are on here, that just always reminds me of the quote from the Roman philosopher Seneca: "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." Those two were both fully prepared and would have absolutely crushed command at a CEB. They just never got the opportunity. I was lucky because I was prepared for it, and my impeccable timing meant that I was given the opportunity. When I assumed command, I intentionally did not want a lot of press. It wasn't that I didn't realize how important this was. I knew that if I was successful, I would help pave the way for others to follow. But the way that I saw it, the Marine Corps chose me to command the 1,200 Marines and sailors of my unit and provide combat engineer expertise, not to be the first female ground combat element commander.
I always give these 3 pillars, right? When it comes down to jobs and stuff like that. Any job you get, as long as you hold your integrity, you continue with great work ethic, and they see your drive and things like that, having a family will not, that will not be a problem for you.
It really is all about advocating for yourself. With my detailer, I did the same, and I let him know, hey, I'm planning on having a baby. So when I came into the community, I had had a baby and I was still on my maternity deferment, which is a year after you have a babe. And as soon as that year was up, I went to PAO school for 10 weeks away from him. And then I went on the Essex and I went on the Reagan for 6 months, and deployed. And my husband was actually Mr. Dad. He stayed home, took care of the baby, and crushed it. And then I came home. He's been on instructor duty. We've been really lucky. He's on instructor duty now, and I am on shore. But we are getting ready to roll into a couple of years of pretty operational heavy tours, where he's going to be operating for 4 or 5 years, and then I will probably go to a carrier. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just you're a team. I mean, ultimately, him and I are a team. We're partners. We do everything together. And you know, when one has to work late, the other one picks up the slack, and we communicate really well. And we also have a tribe and a village. You know, grandmas and grandpas come in, the family care plan, and like Shayla, I don't have a lot of family here, but you know, friends, you call friends, and you make it work. You hustle. And also, I'm very upfront with my staff. My boss, fortunately, really gets it. He was dual mill for years, and so he understands. And I'm like, hey, I gotta go. Kid's sick or something's going on. So yeah, I think it's kind of like the recurring theme here is just like really communicating and advocating for yourself and just being transparent with your leadership.
And I look back and thinking about what were some of the things when I was a young ensign heading off to my new duty station that I would have wanted somebody to tell me when I was 22, 21, 22 years old. And I'm gonna share some tools for you. And just thinking about that, because these are things that I would want my new ensigns showing up to my wardroom in command, being able to have in, you know, and as characteristics as they showed up. And I'll tell you that first impressions do really matter. Okay. Your leadership and your professionalism and the way you present yourself begins now. I know when you're a midshipman, you think that you're going to have all this time to figure out kind of leader that you are and all the things that you're going to be about. But I'm going to challenge you and say that begins right now. Okay. It's time to do a little introspection about the kind of a person that you are and about the kind of leader that you want to become. And I'm just going to lay it out there and be a little honest, is that if your social media is not good enough for your grandma to read, or you're participating in some risky behaviors where, you know, it's a little questionable, I would challenge you to look at yourself and take a step back and realize, you know, your reputation begins with your integrity and your moral compass. Where is that right now for yourself? Okay, ask yourself that question right now. And what I mean by that is it shapes who you are as a leader. It also provides a first impression when you first step foot aboard that ship. Okay. Take your time to write a well-crafted introduction letter to your commanding officer. I received some of the best letters that were handwritten by some of my ensigns. And I will tell you, I laughed and I really had a great sense of the kind of a person that they were and just the kind of a person that I wanted in my wardroom. Okay. They told me what was important to them. They told me about their goals. If they had a dog, if, you know, they came from a large family. So getting to know you before you arrive to the ship is really important. And don't focus less on the content and focus more on what you want people to know about you.
What do you think of the changes that are happening in the military today? This can be specific to your community. Are we heading in the right direction? And is there something specific you would like to see changed?
I'll take that one for the Marine Corps side of the house. So I was one of the last TBS classes to have combat arms MOSs closed off. So I chose combat engineer because it was the closest thing you could get to that side of the house. And then in a year, they opened up all the units to us. So that was really exciting. So kind of as you saw with the Marine Corps trio with Lieutenant Colonel Nash, Lieutenant Colonel McAnder, and Lieutenant Colonel Posey talking about, a lot has changed in a little bit of time. And I do believe we're headed in the right direction. It's not easy to say that it's changing. There are going to be some bumps in the road, but I'm really excited just from seeing the things that are happening in regards to the considerations that Commandant Berger is taking in the hand of why are females getting out more than males are and stuff, and looking at balancing family life and active duty life. They're taking that in consideration, and it's awesome to be able to have those discussions and bring them to the table now, and really starting to value, you know, some things that maybe they didn't take in consideration before. But I can say, in just being in the Marine Corps for 7 years, there have been substantial changes in this small amount of time, and it makes me really excited, and it should make you guys really excited to be future officers and really be able to see those changes coming about. Like I said, there's going to be some moments in time where it might not be pretty, it might not be smooth, but it's part of the process of bringing about a huge change like that. So I'm really excited about it.
I'll jump in here as a great segue. At Millington, we've been looking at the number one question we get is, when is the right time to start your family? How can I be a SWO? How can I stay URL, unrestricted line, and continue my career and still have a family? Because our pipeline has so much operational time into it. And I will tell you, just having a conversation with a friend of mine, LaDonna Simpson, she's out there on the pointy end of the spear. She's a CEO of an LSD, and she went on officer permit for another child. And so I told her she should essentially put in deferment for your promotion. And we figured out that Title 10 law states that's only good for a admin board. So statutory promotions, you're not allowed. Pregnancy is not a reason that you can defer being looked at and being paused for. And so I simply asked the question when I brought it back to Millington was why are we going LIMDU or educational opportunities or things that we have for broadening experiences? I said, I think we need to change the law because it has never been challenged. So right now there's a proposal in place that is being written by Commander Craig Trent that is championing a change to Title 10 with the support of senior leadership to say, we really need to have these conversations. We need to normalize the conversation. So rather than driving women out of the service because they're trying to change themselves around their service, what about making the service more flexible for them in the service? So I really think we really need to have these conversations where we can still broadly meet the mission. We can still go on operational deployments. We can still fly pregnant. We can stay on ships to 20 weeks. We can still make it happen, but we need to be able to change the things that we can control. And we need to get people together. And I think that we're at a really good point in history with the way the administration is very amenable and open to these conversations, as well as senior leadership. And I think the time to do it is now.
Okay, I'm happy to jump in next if I could. I hazard to say I'm kind of the old lady on this Hollywood Squares picture right now. So I've been in for just about 28 years, and much like the great intro you had this morning with both Admirals Franchetti and Admiral Joyner, when she started flying and going out to sea on carriers was about the time that I was just getting my wings. So part of that kind of first wave of women at sea, although I didn't have to take any other tracks because they changed the law when I was in flight school. But I will tell you what I think has most inspired me from a change factor is not so much gender related, but mindset related. And I know a lot of the folks, especially more senior, especially the guys sitting in the detailing shop, is we have a process that's really 1950s. And this mindset of there's a single bread earner or breadwinner, and then the rest of the family's at home, and they're not in your sea bag, and they take care of everything else. And you're the one that goes forth and does what the Navy asks you to do. And I think both women and men from your generation and the one prior have really started to pressurize that mindset, because you don't come at the world with I'm going to pick one career and I'm never going to move, and I just need to work my way up in this organization, and everything that I do is going to support me on that journey. It is far more dynamic, and I think the Navy is recognizing that in order to both recruit and keep the talent that's out there, that we need to be more dynamic and thoughtful in how we do business. And as Admiral Joyner mentioned this morning, we deploy. We are an expeditionary service, so that puts significant constraints in and makes it a little challenging. But I think that the world is moving in the right direction. I should say the Navy is moving in the right direction. I'm trying to figure out ways to break through kind of our old school bureaucratic mindset to support all the things we need to keep the talented folks that are coming in, serving and leading and being able to do the great stuff that you're asked to do and that you have the opportunity to do.
I'll make a quick plug for the submarine community as well. So just like the Marine Corps, we were until very recently an all male force, as I'm sure everybody knows. And we actually just opened up all submarine platforms to women late last year, so July 2020. Very, very exciting. And now we're starting to open up our platforms to enlisted women, although for birthing and, you know, habitability reasons, we're not necessarily going to be able to open up every single platform to enlisted women, just the platforms that are being built in the future in order to incorporate them into birthing, since we all know submarines are very small spaces. But I think something to take away too is our nation's kind of at a pivotal point right now where we're gaining this momentum all in the right direction. So it's up to all of us, especially you guys as the future leaders of the Navy and the Marine Corps, to keep that momentum going and keep up the fight and, you know, try and make gains in every situation possible, not just like gender equity, but diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's been such a big topic right now with the CNO, especially with last year's sort of political and social climate. So again, it's always up to us as leaders in the Navy and the Marine Corps, future leaders, to keep that momentum going in the right direction and keep pushing our Navy forward, because that's why the Navy is making the strides that it is, because there's people like us behind it.
So I tell you, trust yourself and your gut. I must tell you, you will be hit upon by your own fellow male counterparts and others, including other country military counterparts. My advice to you is to set the boundaries and don't cross them. Have a great relationship with your senior enlisted advisors, your gunnies, your chiefs, your first sergeants, your command master chiefs, your sergeant majors. Bounce things off of them. They want you to be your best. Let them help and guide you and learn from them. I want you to remember to leverage compassion and empathy with those that you work with. We need more of that in the military. You have more of it because you're a woman. Use it. Be good and kind to each other. Be a network to each other rather than the competition. Rely on one another. Reach out to one another. Take care of one another. Be yourself and be true to yourself. I won't tell you it's going to be easy to be a female in the military, even in today's military. You're going to be challenged. You're also going to work for men and women of all different generations. Remember, those senior to you are not millennials, and they tend to think differently than your generation. However, remember, most of your leaders are very good people who want to do their best, take care of their subordinates, and get the job done in the best possible way. Be emotionally and physically fit. Be a professional. Take care of one another. Lastly, all those leadership skills and experiences you are learning and will learn are usable in the civilian sector. I use those skills every day in my current job as a chief of staff. I do what Commander Gruskinski talked about walking around and talking to the employees. You learn a lot, you see a lot, you see how they're doing, how things are going in their work life, their personal life, and it allows you to affect change.
The question is, when working with foreign militaries that have different norms for dealing with women, like Afghanistan, as you mentioned, is it better to conform to their culture in order to get the job done, or to challenge their norms for yourself and for the other women there, but risk disrespecting their way of life?
That's a great question. First, be true to yourself. And I would say, stay within your norms of who you are. You're an American military officer working with them. I was told a lot of times when I was in Afghanistan, you can't change their culture. Yet if you go back in Afghanistan history, you'll see in the 70s, women wearing miniskirts, no veils, having jobs, being educated. A lot of things have changed since the war. And unfortunately, it's like women have gone back 200 years in time in that culture. And some of it, I will tell you, in my personal opinion, is a power play by men. They like being in power. I think they know their wives and their daughters could easily run things, but they don't want to give it up. I would tell you to continue to act in your own norms, set the example for them, show them what women are in our military and what women can be in their own country. And don't think that just because they're not willing to change, they can't change. They used to have it, they can have it in the future. They could treat their women much better than they do. I would say very much, like I said, set the example and show them what our culture is about and how progressive we are.
When you're the only woman in the room, it's very easy to feel pressured to succeed and perform to the absolute highest standards. Like I said, you're being watched, you're being noticed, and you don't want it to be in a negative way. You don't want to be the reason why women are viewed as being failures or not working hard enough. Like Colonel Stanlin said, you know, we generally have to work twice as hard and get half as much respect. And it's easy to feel that pressure because it often feels like if I fail, all women fail. And I'll tell you that's not the truth, but it drives us each, I think, to work that much harder and drive towards perfection and very, very high standards.
Our first question is, how would you advise junior officers to change the culture when there may be resistance to that change?
So that's a hard one. First of all, model the culture that you want. Colonel Stanlin talked about, you know, a little bit, you know, how people might just try to, you know, swear more to fit in or tell off-color jokes to fit in. That's not going to change the culture. It's not going to change and develop the culture that you want.
Discipline in pursuit of your passion equips you to take advantage of opportunities that reveal to you your purpose and move you down the road towards achieving your personal destiny. I would say discipline, you know, whether you start off in a really structured household or you transition to military service via ROTC or one of the Naval Academy or the Naval Academy, you are introduced to structure, a certain way of doing things. And I think it kind of influences your behavior. Passion, those things that kind of bring you joy, that interest you, maybe perhaps what you would be willing to do, even if someone didn't pay you. And I can kind of say with confidence that I continue to serve and do what I do because it's just the privilege to lead sailors, to grow personally, and to be a part of such a great naval organization. It is my passion. Opportunities are important. Why? Because when you're faced with new situations, things that perhaps you may not have even considered doing, you have one of two options. You can operate in fear and say, oh my gosh, this is really coming. Am I really supposed to do this? Can I do this? You start to question. Or you can say, you know what? I've been trained. I am ready. This opportunity is for me. And you can move out in confidence and faith. I would say that when we choose the latter of pursuing new opportunities that will help us grow, when we have those positive lessons learned, even sometimes if you don't necessarily meet the mark, it helps you identify your purpose, what you are supposed to do, what helps fuel your passion. And I think ultimately helps you identify if you are walking the path towards achieving your personal destiny.